Hi, welcome to Lake County SWCD's presentation on mapping, specifically how natural resource managers use mapping in their day-to-day work and how you might be able to use different mapping tools in your learning or at home as well. We're going to specifically make a note about ArcMap and Esri products, and then also highlight the Avenza app. Mapping is extremely important for land management, which is what SWCDs do. You need accurate areas and locations when installing projects. An example of this is we often install projects utilizing USDA or NRCS funds, and we may have to verify how many trees or board feet a project install included so that a contractor or the landowner could get paid for the amount that they removed or happen to reforest. Loggers and many lumber management companies also have to verify board feet or the amount of wood they harvest in a logging operation to ensure that they get paid properly for that timber product. Like SWCD and other SWCDs might also use mapping to calculate the area of a buffer along a shoreline so that we can tell if a property owner is consistent with state buffer law. We might use mapping to track a wetland delineation line or where a wetland starts and where it ends. This can help us determine if a property is compliant or adhering to laws related to the Wetland Conservation Act and wetland fill in the United States. We might also use mapping for planning long-term forest management, such as in plans like 2C and SFIA, which are acronyms for tax incentivized programs for forest management health that landowners can be a part of. So we're gonna highlight a lesson from the field here. Our forester, Tim Burns, uses maps and spatial data to identify, evaluate, and prescribe management recommendations for different forest cover types. This is an example of a woodland stewardship plan map. Lake SWCD writes woodland stewardship plans as a fee for service, meaning landowners can pay a small amount for us to write a woodland plan for their property. One of the ways that we use mapping is to identify the different types of forest stands. So in this picture, you can see that there are yellow lines along the property that delineate or separate different types of forests. There might be in stand 1 a mixed conifer forest of 1.6 acres, and maybe there's aspen in another area of stand 2, and there's a homestead pasture or hayfield of 13 acres in stand 3. This delineation of these different forest types helps us get a different management strategy for each of those areas in the plan, so a landowner can effectively manage for forest health, soil health, and water quality. We use a variety of different mapping tools to accomplish this. The map you saw before was created using ArcMap GIS. So that's a specific program, but GIS, or Geographic Information Systems, uses available data. We often find a lot of our data from Minnesota Geospatial Commons, which is a web collection of different resources. And we create shapefiles or different layers of those areas, and we can combine them all into one map to create a PDF or a file that we can share with landowners. ArcMap is also extremely powerful in that we can analyze a lot of our data. For instance, determine how much landscape change has occurred in a given area over the past 20 years. We also use Esri Online, or like an ArcMap product that works online and has a lot of resources available for communication. There are a lot of cool story maps out there, which are sort of presentations utilizing mapping that talk about a lot of these different mapping that will highlight a lot of this mapping work. So for instance, the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency has a map called In My Backyard, and you can look to see where there are Superfund sites, where MPCA permits are located, and all sorts of different information about water quality. We, on our website under invasive species, also have a story map about our aquatic invasive species program, and associated AIS mapping and early detection data. One of the apps we use regularly while in the field is Avenza Maps. The reason for this is that it allows us to communicate some of the files that we make in a powerful program like ArcMap to our phones and track data collection in more real time. This is an example of a map that was created for a project. We have the property here, and we used shape files or these layer files in this really powerful software ArcMap program to make a buffer or sort of a barrier of forest around a creek, and then we're designing our planting area based upon that map. We can then upload it into this this app called Avenza, and we can share it with the resource managers, such as the Conservation Corps crew that we worked with on this project, to so that they can determine where things should be planted, where the boundary of the project is, and then we can go back and we can also look to see where the project was completed and if it's consistent with the plan that we created. Avenza Maps is a powerful app in that you can download a lot of different maps within the software. So there are topo maps available from National Geographic and MinGeo and MinTopo and a couple other different sources. Minnesota DNR is also partnering with Avenza Maps, and so most state parks have trail maps through Avenza. And there are a lot of other mapping software out there. This is one of the ones that we use. It's not an endorsement of that mapping software, but this is just a short run through of one mapping tool that you can use in your own property or in your own neighborhood. We're going to walk through a quick demo of the Lake County Demonstration Forest. And I'm going to click on that in a second, but if you want more information on Avenza, you should visit avenzamaps.com for their tutorials, which have a lot more detailed information. And then I also, of course, challenge you to go out and explore your trails and map your family's property. So we're going to look at this brief tutorial.
Okay, so I am in Avenza Maps right now. And if you've downloaded this app, you can pull up My Maps in the left-hand corner. And I have already pre-downloaded a couple different maps, but if you're interested in downloading maps, you can go to Store, find Maps, and it can search for you different areas where you might want to find a map. All of those blue things are different locations for maps. And you can also search by specific publisher or region. So if you're located near Silver Bay area or in other parts of Lake County, you can search Tetagooch State Park. And it'll pull up a map for Tetagooch. And then you can actually download this. This one is that is a topo map for it. It costs 99 cents, but you can also get free maps from the Minnesota DNR. This one's already installed, and they're GeoPDFs. They'll all show up in the My Maps area. So if you were to look at that, you can filter it by distance. You can filter by name, by date, by the storage used for each of them, like the megabyte usage. You can also turn on filters for different maps from the store that you might have, imported maps, folders, active maps, etc. If you have a free subscription with Avenza, then you can just have 3 imported maps active at one time, and then but you can have more that are stored in your app. You can just only have 3 that are active. If you have a pro account, you can have unlimited number of maps. So the example we're going to use here is the demo forest in Lake County. If I were to click on this, you can see that there's a little gray dot here. And if I were to park at the demo forest here by parking, and I were to pull this up on my phone, this should even work offline. You wouldn't have to have service, which there isn't at the demo forest. When you were to hike some of these different trails, the fat bike trails, it'll be able to track where you're going. If you're on your own property and you have a PDF map, like one of the topo maps that you've downloaded, you can also actually record your GPS tracks here. I can just click start to start recording those. and it'll make a track just like these blue and orange tracks that are on the map. So you can actually refer to the trail that you walked previously. For us resource managers, sometimes we'll record our tracks using this same component, and then we can export them as what's called a shapefile or a layer file that we utilize in a more advanced mapping program, ArcGIS, to then create additional maps and planning documents. I can also place these little place marks there, different types of symbols. I can add photos if need be. So you can actually do a lot with just this small app software here with Avenza Maps. So this is just a little demo about how to utilize Avenza Maps.
So thank you so much for listening to our presentation about how resource managers use different mapping products to help them accomplish their planning goals. And again, if you are interested in utilizing Avenza Maps, you can search Avenza Maps online and look for their tutorials for more information about different tips and tricks and tutorials about how to do that. If you're interested, like SWCD can provide GeoPDFs for upload into Avenza Maps or for your property as a free fee for service, so please contact our office.